subject matters. So most of us probably have heard these things many times, but yet we actually don't realize how much of our daily talk falls into that category of prajalpa. We don't realize. Yes. Yeah, so, and we may also have heard many times how important it is to control the tongue. We say tongue, belly and genitals are in one line. So if we start controlling the tongue and we succeed in that, then we will also be able to control the other urges. And tongue, of course, has two functions, to talk, to eat. So both functions are not easy to control. And in fact, when we overeat, this leads to toxins in the gross body. Anybody who knows a little bit about Ayurveda knows this. Even though the food may be very nutritious and healthy, but if we eat too much, then the body can't digest it, and then that leads to toxins, and that leads to disease. And a similar thing also is there on the subtle body, on the level of the subtle body. Namely, when we speak unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, this leads to toxins in the subtle body of the mind. And we can also understand that the holy name actually carries an echo called Dvani. And even after chanting, this echo still works on our heart. We may have had that experience when we join a very, very wonderful kirtan led by a highly advanced devotee, and then afterwards we can still feel a nice warm feeling there in our heart, and we may feel like going for a little walk in nature and chanting an extra round or something. So that is exactly this echo which the holy name carries. And this echo is immediately destroyed through prajalpa. That switches on immediately the mundane mind, and then this echo is vanishing. Yeah, so we have to be very careful that we don't overeat. That's why sometimes we have fasting days. Soon we will have Nirjala Ekadashi coming. Right? Yes. So it's good to fast on Ekadashis, just even to give the system a bit of a break. Stomach also needs a free day. So it's very good for the health, and also for the mind. So it's good. And in a similar way, it is also good to fast from nonsense talk. Yes, and give, the mind a bit of a break with all these mundane topics and stimulations and things like that. Yes, actually, there is a few nice stories where Prabhupada was reacting very strongly when devotees were speaking prajalpa. There was this one situation with Upendra, a Prabhupada disciple. He was cooking for Prabhupada, and the kitchen was next to Prabhupada's room. And some devotees came back from India. It was in Australia, actually. And some devotees returned from India. And usually when somebody comes back from India, so many news. This devotee, that devotee, oh, did you hear this, he did that, she did this, and. So all this talking was going on in the kitchen. And I mean, in those days we didn't have internet, so the main news were really given verbally, directly, So all this talk was going on, and Prabhupada heard it from his room. And he was very angry. He called Upendra in the room, Upendra, come here. what are you doing? Are you talking Prajalpa? Prabhupada asked, and then Upendra said, is talking about other devotees Prajalpa, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, yes, this devotee, that devotee, don't waste your time, life is short. When two devotees meet, they should talk about Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, how to serve the Lord, and not just about this devotee, that devotee, and did you hear already, and, you know. And then there was another similar situation, and that's when Prabhupada made the statement, Prajalpa, it will destroy this movement. And he was very heavily chastising the devotees, you know, and telling them not to engage in this nonsense talk. And then there was also one more interesting situation when the telex machine came out. So of course telex machine, nobody's using this anymore. This is really outdated technology. But it was the previous technology to fax machine. So before the fax machine came out, the telex machine was there. And this was the first technology where you could write something into a machine and instantly it would come out at the other end. So this was a big new thing. Like Prabhupada was always communicating by sending telegrams. Probably the young generation doesn't even know what that is. I mean, it's not the social media telegram, by the way, but no, you were going to the post office and giving some, you know, words. The telegram style was very short and you know, because each syllable cost something. So it was just coming Tuesday, 7 a.m. or something, you know, that was the message. Very abrupt and shortened style, that was the telegram style. So you would go to the post office and give in your telegram you want to send, and then they send it somehow, don't ask me how, you know, and then it would not be instantly, it would arrive in a few hours or something, you know. So Prabhupada was communicating with normal letters and telegram, you know. So then this telex machine came out, and devotees were very eager to show Prabhupada, look how this works, isn't it amazing? We type in one thing and immediately at the other end it comes out and reaches the receiver. And Prabhupada always liked to have a look at the latest technology. Oh yes, he was looking at it. So then devotees were saying, oh Prabhupada, maybe every temple in the world should have this telex machine. And then we can really communicate so easily. And what did Prabhupada respond? No. And he said, if every temple has this telex machine, you will talk Prajalpa all over the world. That's what he was saying. So without this modern technology, at least it is limited to our immediate environment, you know. But through this modern technology, we can talk all this nonsense talk all over the world. So sometimes I'm wondering what Prabhupada would say about, you know, Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook and all these things, you know. Of course, they all have some little good side to it, but the negative side is by far bigger than the positive side, definitely. And I mentioned it, I think, already, that I'm living without a mobile phone. I don't have a phone. And I can always see how this protects me from all this nonsense talks, you know, because I'm not on any of the social medias, nothing. So I'm usually the last person who hears things, you know, and I'm just not so bombarded with all these messages people get and all this criticism and gossip and this and that and this and that. You know? Yeah, so it is good life. Yes. So, and we can definitely say, this internet is really increasing this mundane nonsense talk to the maximum and creating so many disturbances and misunderstandings and conflicts and negativity, It's, very alarming actually. I also remember hearing the story when Prabhupada was moving into his quarters in Juhu in Mumbai, and the devotees put a phone line into his quarters. That was a new thing. Prabhupada had never had his own phone line, So Prabhupada, all right, he went along with it. Okay, let me have a phone in my room there, in my quarters. So then the first night, in the middle of the night, the phone was ringing. And Prabhupada went, answered the phone. Somebody from America who didn't consider the time difference, was ringing. Oh yes, Hare Krishna Swamiji, we just wanted to say hi, And Prabhupada was so angry, and the next day he said, take the phone line out of my room, I don't need a phone, So I'm doubting whether Prabhupada would have a mobile phone. I don't think he would. If he couldn't even tolerate the phone line in his room, what to speak of a mobile phone, Yes. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote this book, Bhakti-aloka. And in this book he discusses the 6 faults that destroy bhakti. One of them being of a tendency to this prajalpa. And I was reflecting, could be. And then I thought, why is it like that? And then the thought came to my mind that we women are considered to be 9 or even 12 times more lusty than men. Yes. And man's lust, woman's lust manifests differently. So man's lust is more on the gross bodily level, whereas we women, our lust is more subtle, that we are more competitive and we are more envious. And yes, and we like to, bring attention to our body and so on. So, the lust manifests in more subtle ways. So I was thinking this could maybe be a reason, even though I can't remember reading anything like this in Prabhupada's books, but it somehow makes sense, right? If women are more lusty than men and our lust manifests in a more subtle way, and if we detect that or discover that most forms of prajalpa have their roots in envy, so it makes sense that this may be the reason why especially we women are prone to talking prajalpa, Yes, because women, they can be quite backbiting and critical and gossiping about each other and all this, isn't it? I mean, it's just the way it is. And, well, every body brings advantages and disadvantages, so this is maybe our little downside. But no problem, the men have their downsides. And if you ask me, I think a woman's body is a better deal. Yes. Well, I don't want to get into that. No, but I remember when I was married with my ex-husband, we often had these discussions, what's a better deal? And he was also saying, woman's body, better deal, For the men, they have a stronger false ego because they're meant to lead, and just to make sure they play the role, male ego much more bigger and stronger. And this strong false ego, not so easy to get rid of that, Yes. And if you lead, then naturally the false ego wants to be a part of it all. So it's very difficult to lead and take charge in a mood of humble servant. So, but all we have to do is serve humbly, husband, children. So I think that's easier than taking charge without false ego. That's a challenge. So woman's body not a bad deal, even though we may be more prone to talking Punjabi. Yes, so now Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that today in Kali Yuga, people in general become more and more godless, right? They're not so God conscious anymore. This is actually rapidly increasing, this godlessness. If I think of my childhood 60 years ago, people were much more God conscious than what they are now. Even just in 60 years, you can really see a difference. So, and if people become less God conscious, then naturally their talk is also godless, right? And godless talk means pajalpa. It's as easy as that. Any kind of mundane talk which is not somehow connected with Krishna and serving Krishna is classified as pajalpa. Yes. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls the very first kind of pajalpa useless talk. And he puts under useless talk, he includes any kind of mundane literature, like novels, or even the news he puts into that category too. The news, the world news. Yes. So that is an interesting point. And there is also a nice little episode with Prabhupada when Prabhupada was traveling on the plane once with a whole group of disciples. So in the earlier days on the plane they were giving out newspapers. They don't do this anymore because everybody is on the internet and all this. So newspaper is already outdated thing. But the devotees were reading on the plane this Time magazine, which is considered a very good and critical magazine with interesting, thought-provoking articles. So Prabhupada saw the devotees reading this Time magazine and he was saying, "Let me have a look at this." So Prabhupada was flicking through the pages, looking what's happening there, what are they discussing. And then he gave the magazine back to the devotees and said, actually, devotees should not read these magazines. And then he made a very profound statement. He said, it makes this world look so real. Yes, it makes this world look so real. So this is indeed quite profound. And that's exactly what it does if we get too much absorbed in the world news and we read it all up and for hours and research this and that and the other thing. Then we start thinking, this crazy circus of the material world here, this is reality, But actual reality is my relationship with Krishna. Everything else, at the moment of death, curtain closes, show is over, all finished. At the moment of death, who cares, about the war in Ukraine or this or that, or who is the president in this country or that country? Who cares? It has no significance anymore. The only thing that counts at that moment is my relationship with Krishna. That's what we take into our next existence as eternal reality. So, and as devotees, We want to strengthen that eternal reality by absorbing our minds in hearing about the spiritual world, what's happening there. That's eternal reality. But if we are so concerned about the world news, that makes us feel that, this world is so real. So it's, really a very nice statement that Prabhupada made there, So of course, depending on our work or our service, we may have to know a little bit what's going on in the world, right? I remember for years I didn't look at any news, and sometimes on Sankirtan people were always saying, oh yeah, they were electing, the president there in America, and me, president in America, I had no clue. I didn't even know, But yeah, when the first little war started there in Ukraine, and because I'm going there regularly, people were saying, what, you go to Ukraine? Don't you know there's a war there? So I thought, okay, maybe I should look in the news, So, and since then I am looking briefly in the news. But usually, if you just read the headlines, you know enough. That's all you need to know. 5 minutes, just flicking through the headlines of some news website, and you know it all, right? No need to open up all the articles and read them all and this and that, no need. Yeah, so our engagement in hearing or reading the news, we should actually keep to a bare minimum. Bare minimum. Whatever is really necessary to function in our work and in our service, and that's enough. And better to fill our mind with the eternal reality, the eternal news of Goloka Vrindavan. Prabhupada was often saying that. He was often saying, God, these people are so attached to reading the newspaper, people, their whole world falls apart if they don't get the newspaper, but over stupid little things. Usually they're stupid little things, Very common thing in married life, that people are just arguing over dumb little things. And there already we can understand this tendency to be quarrelsome has its roots in envy, because we want to win the argument, we want to put the other person down, we want to establish ourselves in a superior position, knowing better, So this is all coming from envy, actually. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says very nicely that when we argue, we are wasting the mind's strength. So the mind is powerful and has a lot of strength. But if we use it or wasting it by arguing, we're just wasting the mind's strength. Right? Yes. And it leads to so much negativity and ill feelings and anger and So no need to engage in arguments. And especially between husband and wife. I often say, if we women learn just to be quiet and we resist that temptation of answering back and wanting to have the last word, then there will be not much chance for arguments, because husband can't argue by himself, It takes two to argue, So we women, we have to be smart, So if he gets all angry and carries on and on, okay, let him talk. Sooner or later he will finish, It's like a thunderstorm, some grumbling there, No need to grumble back, It will blow over. So same thing with a man. Let's not take it so seriously. Let him grumble, you know. And after a while, it's often most powerful if 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 the wife just doesn't answer, she's quiet, you know. That's often more powerful than answering back and taking part in the whole argument, because then it makes him think, oh gee, she's not saying anything, you know. So maybe I said something wrong, and you know, and then he will start, you know, and he will reflect more. Oh, why didn't she respond? But the usual, the ordinary way of responding is by, you know, answering back and arguing. That's the ordinary way. But to be quiet, you know, that's a powerful reaction. But it means we have to control the tongue. Because that urge to say something comes from the false ego, by the way. You know, that's very powerful and sometimes very difficult to just bite your tongue and be quiet. You know, isn't it? But yeah, so next time, you try that one. You try that tactic. Not to, you know, respond. And then there will be no chance for arguments, you know. Yes, then there will be much more peaceful in the house. And actually it is even a rule of Vaishnava etiquette that, of course, you know, here we are in America, maybe people don't like to hear this here. But it's Prabhupada saying in the Bhagavatam, too bad, I'm just repeating what he says. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam that by nature, a husband wants to be in a superior position. Yes. And by nature, the wife is in a subordinate position. Yeah. And Prabhupada even says this has to be observed even if the husband makes a mistake. You know? And Prabhupada says if the wife learns to tolerate, then there will be peace in the home. Yeah. And because husband wants to be considered in a superior position, it's actually against Vaishnava etiquette to answer back to a person who is in a senior position. To answer back or to defend yourself towards a senior, or to correct the senior, to instruct the senior. This is all against Vaishnava etiquette. Same thing is there also for the parents. Our parents are our seniors, even if they're not devotees, you know. So alright, if they're not devotees, we don't follow anything they say, but we respect them as senior, and we don't answer back. We don't try and have the last word. We don't instruct and correct them. Yes, you know, but we just divert their attention. Yes, all right, Mum, I know what you mean. I'll think about it, and we'll just talk about something else. You know, yes, yes. Oh yes, I mean, it has taken me quite a few years to understand this. And for some years, I had a bit of a tense relationship with my mother, you know. And then finally I realized that I was contributing to this. Because I thought, I'm a preacher, I'm a devotee, I have to tell her what's right, what's wrong. But no, this is against Vaishnava etiquette, you know, because our mothers, our parents, they are our seniors. And we are not meant to correct and instruct them and answer back and want to be right and all this, you know. So it's like that with the parents, it's like that with the husband. So if we follow these rules of Vaishnava etiquette, then we have much more harmonious relationships in the home. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to dissolve our false ego. I was always using my relationship with my mother as a conscious opportunity to let go of my false ego. That I was trying to let her be right, even if she was wrong. Let her be right anyway. No need for me to tell her that she is wrong. And this is a challenge for the false ego, you know, because the false ego is pushing us to correct her and make clear that I know better, you are wrong, I'm right. You know, the false ego wants this gratification. So it's not easy, you know, to bite the tongue and let her be right, even if she's wrong. Very helpful for dissolving the false ego. And same thing we can practice on the husband. You know? Yeah. So if we do this, we win double. We will have a harmonious relationship with the husband, and we will dissolve our false ego. So we can't lose. We win double. Yes. Okay, that's